Hello friends and welcome to That Pedal Show. Mick here. Welcome to part 4, the final instalment of the what has now been called the Wild Goose Chase board build. And we're reaching the final furlong, to use a racing analogy. I have no idea why. My brain has been all over the place with everything that it's taken to get here, and I appreciate that it's a bit of an indulgence. And a lot of people have, in some ways quite rightly, commented, you know, man, this is ridiculous. Just play the guitar. Well, yeah, maybe. Anyway, rather than talk too much more, I'm just going to show you a little bit of video. Episode 3 is going to be published in about 5 minutes' time. And, well, look. Can I get that on there? These two things go. This goes, that goes. And add this and this. Ooh, so this is the last time you'll see this board like this. There you go, we've arrived at a final layout. In part 3, I explained why the pedals had changed so much. I explained why G3 had disappeared. Could I get it smaller? And just to come right back to the top of part 1, the whole idea was to make 2 pedal boards into one and make the amps a bit smaller. The amps will come on to in a bit, but 2 pedal boards into one, that's been done. And I figure that going with the SA450, which is what this is in any case my best compromise of having everything I want, the functionality I want, and size. It's not tiny, and I've decided that if I'm going to do tiny gigs, I will throw an overdrive pedal on the board and just take the TS1 or something smaller. But if I'm going to really enjoy the playing and I'm going to give as much as I can to both projects, remember there's an old band that had reformed and also there's some original music that's going to happen, then I want it all. You know, I want everything that I want and I don't want to compromise. And I've kind of gone even further with that. So G3 has returned. Why? It just makes sense. What it's enabled me to do off the board as it was is get rid of a QMX2, get rid of the humdinger, and also a separate tuner because it has it built in. It means all the signal routing, wet, dry. No, I don't do any stereo at the moment, but if you wanted to do stereo, it's all in there. So it's all fed off there. There are 6 loops and there are 7 pedals. The Facet will sit outside and be first in chain. Everything else gets its own loop. And what's really cool about that is, even though it's going to be quite a complex build, complex for me, it does mean that if I decide I don't want the Belle Epoch, is that how you say it in America? Anyway, the Belle Epoch. I can just swap it out for a different delay and I don't have to change any cabling or anything. Same with the reverb. Can of drink for later. I can swap the reverb out. If I decide that I do just want to try something different on here, I can just swap them out without a nightmare of cabling. So that's one reason. The tune is built in, as I said. It just makes sense. And of course, when you've got used to hearing it after all these years, it is kind of hard to be away from it. So I just think it makes every sense to have it on there. So I've played the Tetris. It's all in one place. It's totally working. I've gone a step further in that I have ordered all new cables. I've ordered new. I'm going to solder all the plugs and make the cables all the right length. So I've got a mixture of square plugs and some other ones. And I've got some cables. So I'm actually going to make up all the cables from scratch. And to compound that professional approach, I've gone ahead and I've got Dan to do me a deal on a GenX 14 power supply, because all that stuff before I've put it away, but anyway, all that stuff before, all the little boxes and stuff, they work great when you're in and out of your rig, and that was the old version of Dan's modular power supply. I'm going to grow up and get a GenX 14 because it means I can just run everything off the one power supply. I know it's the best you can possibly buy, and I will never need another power supply. Well, at least I've done 10 years on the last one, so if this one lasts me 10 years, I figure that's good value. So not too much more talking. You've seen it come to fruition to this point. Let's build this board as professionally as I am possibly able. Go. Yo kids, bit of a Marty McFly Back to the Future moment. I finished the video, I finished editing it, it's all done. And I was just watching it through, took it home to watch it through, and I realised there's something that I haven't said that I've taken for granted that I should say. Everything in this pedalboard build, I've pretty much learned from Dan. And it's just sort of gone in by osmosis over the last 10 years. So I want to say like a public thanks to Dan for everything I've learned and enabling me to A, build this board, and B, share basically his knowledge with you. So I just wanted to get that said. Okay, on with the show. Sunday the 13th of April, I've chosen a weekend because I want to chuck the whole day at it. There'll be minimal distractions, none of that pesky work stuff, and I can just get on and do it. If you're a regular viewer, you'll have seen us put together many boards by this point, and the process is kind of always the same in the way that we tackle it. What I'm going to try and do today is condense it and give you all the information you need, and if you've never done this kind of thing before, kind of a checklist. There's one way at least in how to approach it, and this is the way that Dan and I would favour. So, step 1, play and listen. That's what I've done in the first 3 episodes. Rather than stampede to finishing the board and making it all tidy and lovely, I've actually chucked a few pedals on, took a few off, listened to things, used the amps that I want to try or different amps, you know, the whole setup, just to really solidify the choices. Step 2, play Tetris. You've chosen all your pedals, you've got your board, you should have your power supply as well, everything that's going to go on the board. Spend some time moving it around to get the layout that works best. And one little tip for that, you might have seen me earlier lay out sheets of paper on the base of the board. This is if the board's already got Velcro on it and your pedals have already got Velcro or pedalboard tape. It just means you can move them around easily and you don't need to keep detaching them, which is a pain. Now is the time to start asking the practical questions. For example, what controls do you need to access? What switches do you need to be able to press, and are they far enough apart for your chosen footwear? Does the signal flow and pedal positioning make logical sense in terms of board layout and cable flow? Obviously, this is slightly less of a consideration if you're using a pedalboard switcher. Can you make all the necessary connections, ins and outs, quickly and easily when it comes to setup? Are any of your cables or plugs or connections in danger of being damaged when you're in transit or when you're playing? What have you forgotten? Maybe it's an expression pedal, maybe it's a clock, maybe it's some MIDI thing, an espresso machine, amp switcher. What's not on there that should be? It's that practical stuff that you can so easily forget when you're in the minutiae of pedal choices and all the rest of it. So just think it through. What happens? You plug in, you play. Just think it through. Step 3, draw diagrams and or make a list. A diagram is particularly useful for audio signal flow. That's to say the audio cables between the pedals themselves or between the switcher and the pedals. And if you can visualize the signal flow, you can also count up how many patch leads you're going to need. In addition to the audio signal cabling, you might have peripheral stuff such as control jacks, MIDI, expression pedals, tap tempo, all that kind of stuff. So just make sure everything that should be there is there. Additionally, it can be really helpful to write a list for your power requirements. Now, if you've only got 3 pedals on the board, maybe not such a big deal, but if you've got 7 or 8 and you've got things that require high current, maybe even different voltages, maybe even different polarities, just write it down in a list now. You need to know the voltage, the polarity, and the current. That means you can connect up your power supply accordingly when the time comes. And stating the bleeding obvious, it's probably a good idea to check that your power supply can supply all of those intended voltages and currents and polarities. Step 4, start attaching your pedals to the board. Now, there are a number of ways you can do this. There are a number of things that you can use to attach pedals to a pedal board. The method that Dan and I favour is using, take the sheet paper out. On the base of the board, we like industrial soft side Velcro. Industrial, you'll often see it listed as that when you come to buy it. It's just a little bit stronger with the tackiness and a little bit more robust than standard sort of consumer stuff. And we tend to cover the whole of the lower surface, or the rail if you're using pedal train type board, mono, whatever. If there's a rail, just cover the whole thing. And that means you have the maximum amount of movability when it comes to moving stuff around. So soft side Velcro. Pedals themselves, actually this one's a bit overkill, but we use 3M dual lock. It lasts for ages. And it's really great because you can just put stuff on and off multiple times. I can't tell you how many times this pedal has been on and off a pedal board. And this stays in relatively good condition. This stays in good condition and it can just live on there. Now, word of warning with 3M dual lock. Number one, get the stuff with the 3M branding on the back and it's white on the back. It has a plastic backing. Don't get the stuff that's the sort of foam rubber backing because it's rubbish and it tears off and it's impossible to get off the pedals. Finishes like this, which are sort of powder coated or painted and then lacquered over the top, you can just peel it off again. It won't damage the pedals. But do be careful with anything that's hand painted because I've seen it pull the finish off the back of pedals. You don't really want that. If you look at this Harmonious Monk, for example, to Mick, love from Jam. Thanks, guys. How lovely is that? You can see here that there's just these little triangles on there, and that's enough. And when you put that down there, give it a little twist like that, that'll stay. That's just not going anywhere. And then to remove, assuming you've got past your Pedalboard Tetris phase, I just use a butter knife and very carefully between the 3M and the Velcro. Couple of other things to say about dual lock. It does not like rubber bottom pedals. So if you think about a Boss pedal, for example, that's got the big rubber thing on the bottom, or an Ibanez pedal, the dual lock won't stick to that very well. In that case, on some Boss pedals, you can just take the base plate over, flip it over, and it will sit the other way up in the pedal. A lot of modern Boss pedals, the circuit board is too close to the edge of the pedal to allow that to happen, but certain old ones, it's easy. I just pull it off. And I know that will damage the resale value of the pedal if you can't stick it on again, but I can't be doing with pedals falling off the board. It's up to you. Finally, on the dual lock, rubber feet. I discovered recently that rubber feet are generally not included with pedals these days, and that's where you'll get a little rubber foot that goes on the bottom of the pedal if you were going to have it on a slippy surface. I just pull them off and throw them away, and that's why they're not included, because so many get thrown away. But if you can't face taking the rubber feet off your pedal and you don't want to throw them away, or in the case of a crybaby wah where removing the rubber feet would mean the bottom would fall off, you can build this stuff up in layers. So a bit there, another bit on the other side of it, stick another bit to the back of it, another bit, and then you can build it up so it's deeper than the actual rubber feet. That's a good way to do it. Lastly, on sticking your pedals down, and this is back to the Tetris phase, just make sure that you can actually plug your pedals, your jack plugs in and out, because as you can see on this top row here, these are all top mounted jacks, no problem. But if you have a pedal with side mounted jacks like this, you need to either make sure that the jack plug is inserted before you place the pedal down, or that there's enough room to actually do it. Side mounted jacks drive me crazy. It just shows you how much I love a Harmonious Monk. Step 5, and we're finally on to wiring. Dan and I tend to do power first. You don't have to do power first, and you can do power and audio together if you want. Doesn't matter, but the reason we choose to do power first is because the power leads tend to be smaller profile, and they can sit out of the way, and they're less obtrusive when it comes to do the audio. If you do the audio first, the power can be a bit more fiddly. That's the only reason we do power first, so we do. Working from your diagram then, one by one, connect up your pedals to the relevant tap on your power supply. This can be incredibly simple if you've just got barrel jacks on both ends. You in the pedal, in the supply, happy days. Slightly more complicated for my build because I'm going with Gig rig GenX 14. I've resisted getting a GenX 14 for ages because I had the old modular power supply, and I love it dearly because of the way it's so flexible in pedal boards that change all the time. But this is the daddy. I say without hesitation, it's the best power supply you can buy, and it will cover everything on this board. It will even, if I put my Kingsley Juggler Mark III on, which is 750 milliamps, 12 volt reverse polarity, it will even do that. Because up here somewhere you've got two 1 amp outs which you can switch between 9 and 12. I got 4 high current, 500 milliamp ones and 8 200 milliamp ones, and that's good news because what do I need? 1, 2, 3 with Harmonious Monk low current, no problem. And I need 1, 2, 3, 4 high current. And what do I mean by high current? They require 500 milliamps there, plus I've got these others if I want them. So this will more than do the job. Further, it's look at that, look at the profile of it. Really, really cool. Slight tangent, I did contact Jake and say, Jake, you've sold a lot of these now. Tell me, where is it noisiest? And he said, nowhere is it noisiest. You can put it wherever you like. So I'm hoping I might be able to put it on the underside here, which would be really, really super tidy. I mean, it can also sit down there out the way as well. But if I can get it under here, I'm going to put it under there. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, that's all the stuff you need to think about. Sight your power supply. Feed the leads back to it. Now you will see pictures of pedal boards that are so beautifully regimented with everything in perfect lines and right angles and everything cable tied down to within an inch of its life. It's a beautiful thing to look at, but it can be an utter pain in the arse if something goes wrong and you need to pull it to bits. So, you know, it's up to you, isn't it? Some people can't deal with it being messy under there. They think it's a sign of bad character or something. Somewhere in between works for me, so I can immediately see something if I need to fix it, but also tidy enough that it's not going to come loose in transit or be in any way vulnerable to damage. So, all wired up and connected, time to test you've got power to all the pedals. Do remember that some pedals require a jack input in order to power up. This is true of a lot of older pedals. So if something isn't powering, just stick a jack plug into the input socket, and that will tell you if it's working or not, or if you need to revisit your wiring. Step 6, really? 6? We're finally going to cable up the audio. Dan and I tend to leave this last, as I say, because it's the bulkiest of the cabling, but it's the same process. So in the case of a small board, it could be as simple as connecting 2 or 3 patch cables between the pedals. Boom, done. In a board like this, slightly more complex because I'm using the switcher, right? Using G3, which means each of G3's loops need to have a send and a return to each of the pedals. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops. Number 1 will be the Argo Boost Deluxe. Number 2, I'm not even going to go through it, but you get the idea. And again, I'll say the same thing for cabling tidiness. It's as tidy or as chaotic as your brain will handle. A general point on cabling, don't make it too tight. If you make it too tight, it's going to strain. Just always give yourself a bit of leeway. And critically important, if you've got a 2-tier pedal board and the top tier flips up like it does on some Schmidt Rays and others, you need to make sure that the cables are long enough to handle the flip. That is especially the case if you've got a double width top tier, as on some of the bigger boards. Because if you imagine, the cable's got to go all the way around there and all the way back down here. When you lift it up, that's quite a lot of cable. It's one of the reasons Dan designed the gig rig pedal board, is because it mitigates a lot of that. Anyway, make sure they're long enough. Don't make anything too tight, and happy days. That's it. So cables themselves, patch cables. I'm going to actually solder all of mine for these. I've got some square plugs, and I've got some Reen plugs. Collection of things that I've got. I've decided to do it all new from scratch because I'm just in that kind of mood. Is it better than screw-in solderless? We're big advocates of the Evidence Audio screw-in solderless system. Is it better? No. The only thing that's better, the only thing that matters is that you make them well. You need to measure out how long each cable is going to be. So I know that my Belle Epoch Deluxe is going there, and I know it's going to be in loop 4. So I need enough cable to come out of there and go back. 2 cables, right? In order to get up here to the Argo Boost Deluxe, it's got to go out the back of G3, it's got to go up the back of the board, and it's got to come over the top here. So just measure them out, give yourself a bit of leeway, and make your cables one by one. I would also suggest, well, you could batch make them if you were really confident, but I would suggest testing them. Every time you make a cable, test it. Make sure the connections are good so that you know when you put it in the board, it's going to work. Again, the practical things are easy to forget here. So I've got 7 pedals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're all cabled up, happy. I have conveniently forgotten I also need an expression pedal to control the Belle Epoch Deluxe. I need outputs from G3's 2 outputs to the outputs here. I need the control jacks to switch the HK rotosphere, which will also come into here. And the point of mentioning that is that that is a patch bay. It will do mono and it will do TRS, and there are 6 ins and 6 outs. So if your pedal board is a few pedals on a board, in, out, easy peasy, no need for this. If you've got, what have I got? In, out, 2 amps, a TRS for the HK rotosphere and a TRS for this. I got 6 connections. So having it all in one place on a patch bay such as that can be a really, really good way to do it. So that's it. You're cabled up. Everything's plugged in. You know it's powered. So now test your pedals one by one to make sure there's signal. If it's all working, you're done. Go play the guitar. Loop 1 is the Argo. Great. Loop 2 is the Balladeer. Loop 6 Golden. Haha! It works! It works! I genuinely didn't think we were going to get here. Flipping heck. Right, update. I've got to the end of the power. It's not the tidiest job in the world, I don't mind admitting. I've managed to get GenX 14 under here, which is really, really efficient use of space, but there's some cabling I'm not very happy with there. I'll do some details when it's all finished. And I've got the actual power supply bit, the bit that supplies the high current and the voltage to the GenX 14 actually in the board. This has been a problem in the past because if there's a tube pedal above it, sometimes it can pick up the noise. But I'm going to try it. I'm going to go, because if it's in the board and the Schmidt array has its own IEC adapter at the back, that's even less setup time. And I really, really do hate stuff trailing all over the place, power supplies and what not. So, you know, it's a bit mum and dad knife and fork haircut when you're 9 years old, but not as tidy as Dan would do it. But as I said before, I'm not too bothered about that. As you saw in the montage previously, it does all power up, it does all work. So now I'll get on with the audio, which is going to take much longer because there is soldering involved. Anyway, there we are. Looking smart, isn't it? Whoa, flipping heck. So if I just had a dreadfully dispiriting experience. The cable I've chosen is this MkII 2319, right? And I chose it because, I don't know, MkII sounds like posh cable, doesn't it? And it has an outer diameter that sort of fits with Pedalboard. So I made up my first 2 patch cables very happily with the Reen pancake ones. Maybe I'll do a detail. And the square plugs, not square ones, on the end. One cable absolutely fine. The other one, just for whatever reason, just would not conduct properly. And anyway, so I Googled it. I thought, I must be getting something wrong here. I'll try and do a better detail of this. But this 2319 cable, right? You've got the outer shield, the fat bit. You've then got an inner conductive black bit. And inside that is the actual shield. So if that inner conductive black bit touches the signal wire, Now it does say that in the instructions, to be fair, but I didn't fully understand it. So I've just literally spent an hour and a half making 2 patch cables, which is dispiriting nonetheless. Anyway, while we're there, I will show you my makeshift patch cable making station. Save carrying proper cameras around. I have a fan to suck the air through that way and take the fumes away. There you go, I don't know if you can see that. Oh, there you go. So you can just see that black bit of screening there, the fat outer shield, and oh man, and I think that's the problem. So I'm going to continue. Honestly, it's just, I was going to give up and go home, and it's, to be fair, it's now 5:45 on a Sunday night. I've got to record with Dan tomorrow and film and record some drums as well, so I am 2 patch cables. Okay, onwards. I think I know what the problem is, so onwards. Colour me pretty pissed off. I am ruining my choice of patch cable. This MkII patch cable. Now, a good workman would never blame his tools, but you know, I'm not the worst solderer in the world, but I am struggling. I have had so many failures because of that inner conductive shield. And what happens is you have to cut it so short to go in those little plugs that by the time you've heated it up enough to make the solder go, it can melt the inner plastic shield, and loads have failed. So it's now like 8 PM Sunday night. I've been doing patch cables for 5 hours and I've kind of nowhere. I've got this far. So the really annoying thing about that is that's put me behind. That's going to be a week. That's put me behind a week because now I can't get to this for a week because of filming and other stuff. So yeah, I'm thoroughly pissed off actually. So sorry to take that out on you, but I thought I would share it because it's part of the reality of pedalboard building. So yeah, I'm going home. I'm going home. I'll see you in a better mood next time. Bye. Morning, another day, another 76 pence. My mood has improved somewhat thanks to coffee. But as you can probably hear, my health has deteriorated somewhat as we managed to pick up a seasonal plague. Anyway, so you can just probably hear Catherine coughing in the background. So we cancelled filming today. We cancelled the drum session because I don't want to give it to Dan. He's very, very susceptible to all kinds of respiratory stuff. So, but what it does mean, every cloud and all that, means I can get on with the board and hopefully finish it. I'm going to have one final go with this MkII cable. I woke up at 4 AM thinking about what the problem was. So I'm going to make one more and just see if I can do it right because I want to beat it. However, I think I'm going to give up then and just revert to a bunch of cables that I made up using simpler cable. Every now and again, I'll just make a cable because I need it for something. So I've got 10 or 20 just kicking around, and actually closer to 10. And adapt some of these, which has much simpler cabling. And of all of these I've made, I've never had one fail. So it's not the cable's fault. It's my inability with precision stripping and soldering. Anyway, so let's do that, and then hopefully we can finish this cabling and get it all done before too much longer. As you can see then, I've got the door open. That's my fan blowing the other way. I don't have a proper soldering fan, but this will at least take the fumes that way. Got it on high speed. So we'll just tin these up a little bit. Not the best job. I'm trying to stay out of the way for the filming. Sometimes it's easier to plug jack plugs into a socket, and it makes them really easy to solder. But I'll just stick it down like this. Now I just got to make a solder joint that's not going to melt this cable, this insulation cable. Flow and off. That should be a decent enough joint with any luck. Yeah, that's okay. And there's no reason that shouldn't work. Sleeving goes on. Pin goes on. Tighten that up. Repeat that process for the other end. Okay. So there we go, soldered, shiny joints. Don't see why that won't work. That should work then, shouldn't it? We think. So let's go and test it. Now, having tested a load yesterday, obviously this is highly scientific. I could use a multimeter if I knew how to do it, but I'm never sure if it should read 1 or 0. Comment below. This should give off a very loud sound once the amp gets up to temperature. I can tell you the plug is good, so that has worked, just leaving a bit longer and using the longer jack plug. Hooray. Will I do another one? Let's see. Back to the board then. And as you can see, this cable that I've just done, which was for the return, actually it was for the send of the Venus. Sorry, it was for the send of the Venus. So they're a bit longer than these smaller ones, but actually it's not a big problem because there's not much else in the board. And I wish I'd bought those plugs. I think it's the combination of the right plug and the right cable. These plugs, just too short, I think, to get enough of that. Oh, I'm just not going over it again. So, and now I can sort of rest easy because at least all the plugs on the top panel, well, not all the plugs on the top panel are the same. Let's reflect on what we've learned. So despite all the good intentions and all the kind of, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, things have happened along the way that have made this really complex. And because I ran into a problem with the particular cable that I'd chosen, and that's not unusual, is it? So what have I learned? Well, if you're facing limited time, set your sights really low. Don't give yourself too much to do because you do need to just give it the time it needs, and you need to have the patience, which I was losing big time yesterday. So anyway, I'm going to finish the cabling and then we can test it. Crivens, to use an old Englishism. Didn't really feel like we were ever going to get here, but I have finished all the cabling. I don't think I need to explain it, I'll just put a diagram up, but it's all finished. The longer plugs way easier to wire than the short ones. Loop 1 is the Argo. Great. Loop 2 is the Balladeer. Loop 3 is the Venus. I thought it wasn't working, it's just the volume was down. Loop 4 should be the Belle Epoch Deluxe. Loop 5 should be the Harmonious Monk, which is underneath. Loop 6 golden. It works! It works! I genuinely didn't think we were going to get here because of the nightmare with the cables. I can't hear any weirdo hums and buzzes. We'll check that when we take it in the other room, get it loud. But it's cabled, it's powered, everything works. So now it's down to programming G3 to do what I want it to do, which isn't that complex actually. Everything will be on its own preset. So what I think I want is, number 1 will be the global preset. When I do that again, I want to see if you can put the tuner on the hidden preset. Maybe you can. Number 2 will be didn't check the fuzz. Yeah, fuzz is working great. Number 2 will be the Argo. Number 3 will be the Balladeer. Number 4 will be the Venus. Number 5 will be the delay, and that will be on. I actually won't have that on a foot switch because it's on all the time. So number 5 will be Harmonious Monk. 6 will be Golden, and what I'm hoping is 7 and 8 can be on off for the rotosphere and fast slow for the rotosphere. Sounds like a plan, right? Okay, see you in the other room. Well, this is exciting, isn't it? As you can hear, the pestilence and plague that has plagued us is still here. I think it's past the worst now. Knocked us out for a couple of days. Anyway, it is what it is. So we're all plugged in. I know it's working. I've just line checked everything to make sure everything is actually working. And I want to talk about the loop switcher really, really briefly after we've done one thing. When you're using amps, 2 amps, you've got to have them in phase, as Dan and I often talk about on the show. So via the 2 outputs that you can see here, they're going output 1 and output 2 will feed the 2 amps, right? And on the second one, it's isolated and phase reversible. So what I'm going to do now is just check the phase. By the way, while I'm doing this testing, I've chosen a deliberately single coil guitar because I want to know the difference between RF and if there's any actual buzz or hum in the system. So RF, buzz or hum in system, not yet. It's actually really quiet, so I'm super pleased with that. Anyway, if you hear any RF during this phase, it's because it's RF, as you would get with any single coil guitar. So, I mean, from where I'm sat, I can hear that immediately. And the good news is in G3 Atom or G3, you can set it globally, so it won't ever change that unless you change it per preset, but we don't need to. So let's talk about loop switches then. Just very briefly, Dan and I take loop switches totally for granted because Dan builds them, right? So it's his job, and when he builds rigs for pro players, they tend to want to use one. But we meet loads and loads and loads of people who have no idea what they are or what they're for. And if that's you, maybe you're not watching this video, but if you are and you're just not sure, I'll do it really briefly. Okay, so at its simplest, a loop switcher can be something like this, which is 6 independent true bypass loops. And the point of doing it is, if you've got a pedal such as an old Tube Screamer, an old wah-wah, in my case, the tube driver that was on the previous iteration of this board, the bypass state can be really tone sucky in a big way. That's to say, when the pedal is off, it can really detrimentally affect your sound. So by putting it in a true bypass loop, you only switch the pedal on, you only make it active when you make the loop active. Now, what we see a lot of people who are new to loop switches do, and you can't get your head around, is, let's say, for example, here's delay, right? Let's say we're using this switcher just for a second. When your pedal stays on all the time. So as you can see here, the Belle Epoch Deluxe is off and it's on. The pedal stays on all the time, and you use the loop switcher to turn it on and off. It's not powered up, so that's why the light isn't working. And quite often when you see somebody use a loop switcher for the first time, and I still do this sometimes, instead of pushing the button on the switcher to turn the pedal on and off, you still keep going for the pedal. Just takes a minute. All right, so that's benefit number 1. Benefit number 2 is, as your rig starts to get more complex, you might want to do different things. So I want to do different things. I want to run 2 amps. I want to have a wet-dry signal chain. I want to be able to remotely switch some things. Now that might be, in my case, the Hughes & Kettner Rotosphere, which is in the back of the 2-Rock. But it might also be the channels on your amp. And loop switchers, certainly the more advanced they get, will include some element of remote switching. On from that, we get into MIDI. The point being, each of these buttons, and they all broadly work in the same way, each of these buttons can be set up to recall a whole preset. That is to say, a whole combination of pedals. So you just press number 1, on comes the delay, the overdrive, and the reverb if you want. Press number 2, a different selection of pedals, you get it. In addition to that, you can add things like MIDI commands, you can add amp switching. So you can go from really radically different sounds with just one foot switch. The idea isn't new, of course. That's where programmable MIDI racks and stuff came around decades ago. But to do it in pedalboard size like this with modern pedals is a really cool thing. And that, for what it's worth, is why Dan started the gig rig, because he was using all these old vintage pedals that had terrible tone suck. And when you stacked them all together without keeping the loops independent, there was a lot that could go wrong with your sound. So that's why a loop switcher. And in practical sense, as I said before, I lost the QMX2, which I was using because of the tone suck issue with the tube driver. I lost my tuner, and I've also lost an extra little box that enables us to do the wet-dry signal routing. But it gets even better, because what you can then do per preset, in G3 anyway, is, let's say you want stereo in one preset, wet dry in another, dual mono in another, you can have it. So it's extremely useful in that way. Plus, as I mentioned earlier, it has an inbuilt tuner. So as it stands, my Atom is programmed the way I used to have it. So switch 2 is loop number 1. Actually, I will just say that one of the confusing things about the way this is labeled up is you've got loops 1 to 6 and you've got foot switches 1 to 8. And it doesn't necessarily follow that that switch 2 turns on loop 2. That was something that took me months, years, in fact, to really get my head around. Because, as I said, at the moment, switch 2 is set up in what we call stomp box mode, so it's just going to turn the pedals on and off, and it's going to turn the Argo on, loop 1. Switch 3 is going to turn the Balladeer on. Switch 4 is going to turn on whatever's in loop 3, which is the Venus. Yep. Switch 5 should turn the delay on, which is in loop 4, 5-4. I know, drives me nuts. Let's see. Yeah, and there's one other thing to check here. Because I've got this expression pedal hooked up to control the delay level, so I leave it on all the time, and I've got this expression pedal to turn the delay level up, which is controlled out of the back of the Belle Epoch Deluxe through this patch bay, which I showed you earlier, and to the expression pedal. Great. And then 6 should be loop 5, which is the Harmonious Monk. This, by the way, is my spare power cable to go out to my wah-wah, which I haven't explained yet, but that's what that's there for. Need to tidy that away. Right, Harmonious Monk. Great. I'm a bit annoyed at having a Harmonious Monk tucked away underneath, because it means I can't really use the tap function, which I don't use anyway, or I don't use regularly, so it is what it is. And then switch 7 finally should be the golden. Killer. So that's all working. I've got to get used to this. I haven't really used this yet, so I need to program some sounds in. So now I'm just going to spend some time. I'm going to keep it broadly the same as that, except this doesn't need a switch anymore because it's going to stay on all the time. And the way it stays on all the time, this is as detailed as I'm going to get about this. Here's my main preset, number 1. I'm just going to turn it on in preset number 1. And that's as simple as every time I select preset number 1, it will be on. That's how hard it is to program. It's a little bit noisy, which is kind of annoying, but there we are. Right, I'll be back presently. Okay, about 10 minutes later, 2 groovy things I've discovered. At the moment, my tuner is on foot switch 8, right? But I want to relieve it from foot switch 8 because I want 7 and 8 to control the rotosphere, which we'll get on into in a minute. But at the moment, I'm in my regular preset, and if I press 8, it'll go straight to the tuner. See? Then I can tune. So I'm going to get rid of the tuner off number 8 simply by getting rid of that. Now it's a standard preset, so I don't need to worry about that. What I want to do is put my tuner on a second stomp on number 1. Now, G3 has something called hidden preset. So if I go to number 1, the first time I press it, you have to enable hidden preset in one of these menus. Took me a minute just to find it. It's right here somewhere. Hidden preset, there you go. Hidden preset enabled, disabled. So you enable it. And then when you press this button again, once it's enabled, you'll go to another preset. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Guess which is the hidden preset? 9. Okay. And then I thought, well, what would you have to do then to tell it to go to the tuner? Well, should we press that? And then for some reason I pressed that as well, but it didn't seem to do anything. But in any case, right, there's me preset. There's me tuner. How cool is that? I've just saved a foot switch. So the next really groovy thing I discovered, what I want 7 to do is switch on the HK rotosphere, which is in the back of the Two-Rock. And what I want 8 to do is change the speed. And that happens because there is a TRS jack that's coming from the back of the rotosphere. I've got an extender cable and I'm plugging it into my patch bay here because this is the one that it's going in, this yellow one. If you can see that, it goes all the way back through here and it goes back to here in G3, which is the remote 1 and 2 switches. You can assign the remote switches as stomp box functions, just the same as, for example, if I turn on loop 3, on comes the Balladeer, and you know it's stomp box because the stomp box light illuminates. So in order to put something into stomp box mode, hit the foot switch. Let's see if I can get this right. Hit the foot switch, put it into stomp box mode, and then select what you want to assign to it in stomp box mode. So I want to assign the remote switching to it. Where was it? It was up here, wasn't it? It was in Atom stuff. Remote 1 on, remote 2 off. So I'm hoping now that means it will come on, will it? Which then means I can just assign, well, let's do it again. So we'll go to 8. Now that at the moment is selecting a preset, but we don't want that. We want it to select a stomp box mode. And once again, we want to, yeah, both of them are on. So is that doing that? Am I getting that right? Okay, I've worked that out so I don't have to create separate presets to do the remote switching. All I've got to work out now is how to be able to flip-flop between them so that when I press 7, 8 goes off and vice versa. Hopefully, I won't do any more. That shows you that I've been able to get everything on here doing what it wants. So I've got my hidden preset doing my tuner. I've got the rotosphere set up on 7 and 8. Haven't fully decided whether I want it on 2 switches or 1. And it would definitely make sense to have the slow one on 7. And the first thing you hit is it goes slow. And then if you want it fast, it's got to go fast. Or it might just be better to have instant access to either. Cool. I'm really pleased. I'm really, really pleased. I'll put a diagram up just to explain what's doing what. But that was easier than I thought it was going to be. Next stop, let's have a listen to a couple of amps, and then we're done. I promise we're done. Blimmers. We had Crivens earlier. Let's have Blimmers now. I'm not going to talk too much. You've seen it all. This is the end of episode 4. It's done. It's finished. Save for a bit of tidying up and obviously getting used to some settings. Just going to get some first impressions of what we've got going on here, and I'll play a little bit and then swap the main Marshall amp out for something else and then for something else, just to see where we are. raucous. I'm just digging the Marshall and the 412, but I think the Two-Rock's getting drowned out a bit. Let's swap the amps over. From the ridiculous to the sublime, Mark III Mesa Boogie, 80s Mark III Mesa Boogie, taking the place of the Marshall. So we've gone from head and 412 to probably the most unhinged 112 combo ever made. I used to use one of these when in my late teens, mid-teens. And I bought it because it was the loudest amp you could buy that I was aware of at the time. So we've just swapped it out for the Marshall. Let's see, I will play some humbuckers in a minute. Utterly, mentally loud. Like, properly unhinged loud. It's only on 2.5, the Boogie. Maybe because of the EV speaker. It's way louder than the Marshall was. Which must make it the most powerful, like 1x12 option. It's crazy, actually. Just turn it down, you say? That's bonkers. I want to hear a lot more of that amp doing other things. Let's swap it out for something else. And bringing it all back home. My favourite amp of all time ever. The other Two-Rock. The other Two-Rock. What a ridiculous thing to say. Anyway, I'm interested. It took a while. And there's work to be done, but I'm just going to leave it there. I don't suppose the sounds are that different from when we started because the gear was more or less the same. What's happened is it's shrunk into a usable package as far as the single pedal board is concerned. And packing the second pedal board into the back of the little Two-Rock, the TS1. Keep calling it little Two-Rock, nothing little about it. So now it's just, you know, a very privileged position to be able to go, well, what shall I use for the main amp? Big one, little one, whatever. And there's enough scope of gain on here. I mean, the Balladeer today is sounding... It's just sounded spectacular. And I have to say that the Venus is more than a worthy replacement for the Tube Driver. I am super happy. I am ecstatically happy with the noises that I'm hearing. So now, just got to learn it, haven't I? I've got to use it. I've got to forget about all that crap, forget about all the minutiae, forget about all the building, forget about all the functionality, and just try and make some music. That's the next step. Thanks for sticking with it this long. I think we got there in the end. Kinda. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Do all the things. I need to go home. Goodbye.